Cypress Development Corp's flagship lithium project is located just east of Albemarle's Silver Peak mine in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. A 12-hole exploration drill program for lithium-enriched claystone on Cypress's 100% controlled properties is now underway. Cypress Development Corp trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the Pink's CYDVF, and on Frankfurt's C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Harvey Oberfeld, a retired but still engaged television reporter. You can find his blog, Keeping It Real, on harveyoberfeld.ca. Welcome back to the show, Harv.
Good to be back.
BC has a referendum coming up on proportional representation. Is this a good deal for British Columbians?
No, and I say that not lightly because I used to support PR. I thought years ago, it's a shame that every vote doesn't count. But BC has changed a lot over the last 20 years demographically and also politically, and I now believe that it would be opening up a can of worms that would do more harm than good. It would not add to the democracy. It would divide the population really severely.
What kind of divisions could you see, and are there any recent examples of that?
Well, I mean, if you look overseas, some countries that have had, PR, various versions of it, Greece, Israel, I think Italy has some sort of, or type of PR. There's several countries that have had it, and, if you have a homogeneous or fairly homogeneous population, like Australia or something like that, it can work. But if you have a very, very diverse population, either ethnically or religiously, or even from a point of view of political extremes on either side, you really get into a bad situation. And in BC, the reality is, and people don't like to talk about this, but we have an ethnically very, very diverse population now. And the first sign, I wrote about this actually several months ago, warning that it would divide BC. And the first sign of that actually happening, we now have for the first time a candidate who's going to have Chinese characters on his election ballot identifying himself. And interestingly, even the Chinese translation, from what I've seen, does not really just translate his name phonetically, but it's almost like a campaign slogan. It says, "Remember your roots." So anybody who could read those characters knows that he's referring to some sort of ethnic background that he has, or some sort of geographic background that he has, or some sort of cultural background that he has that the other candidates may not have. So right away you've got somebody who's now taking advantage of something that's more than just either of Canada's two official languages. And I think that would happen in a PR system, proportional representation system. I think we would have not just the main parties running, but I think you'd have the possibility of ethnic parties springing up. Because remember, under some sorts of PR, you don't just get votes according to what happens in the riding. You get votes province-wide. So you could actually have some groups rise up and say, look, we want to represent our people, our culture, our interests. And you could have it in the Chinese community, you could have it in BC in the East Indian community. Eventually you could have Muslims who sometimes get very political, looking for the extremists, of course, Sharia law, anything like that. Well, right now, running riding by riding, they don't have a chance in hell getting elected if they're on the extremes. But once you introduce province-wide calculation of total cumulative votes, you do open up that possibility. Take a look at Israel. Take a look at where the religious right would never be elected to government, these extremists. But to get into power, if you have a minority government situation, all kinds of administrations have to make deals with these extremists on one side or the other, and have to be supported to form power. that is a very dangerous situation. And we've seen it in BC with the NDP being propped up by the Greens. Now that was accomplished under the first-past-the-post system. So there it shows that, minority parties can have influence, can have power, even under the first-past-the-post system. The Greens, certainly were able to pressure the NDP it affects their policies, it affects their actions. Some people might call it blackmail, but it does already exist. But if you open it up to proportional representation, the Greens will, believe it or not, they'll be the moderates. I mean, you could actually have some extremist parties on an ethnic basis. What about concerned citizens? What about some religious parties that could spring up? Any kind of cultural parties. And they could actually, through a province-wide addition of votes, get into a position, not to form government. That's not the goal. But just to have 2 or 3 seats so that they can basically influence power, influence governments, especially in a minority situation. And I don't think we need that in BC. And BC would be very badly divided by the system that one time looked like it would be a good idea to give everybody some sort of a value to their vote, but it would really open up a can of worms. And if you look at some of the other countries that have tried this, even in Europe, where you've got a lot more extremist parties that are now starting to build power, not by taking government, but by taking a minority position and influence. Sometimes maybe that minority influence position is more powerful than being in the government, because you're the ones who decide who will form government, and I don't think we need that in BC, and it is a possibility.
We'll have more with Harvey Oberfeld right after the break.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp, MGI and the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected several high-grade gold intersections, including 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. Additional drill targets on the LH property have been identified by a 2018 drone airborne magnetic survey to further evaluate a pyrrhotite-enriched gold-bearing system. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Harvey Oberfeld. We have a new NAFTA agreement. Is it a good deal?
Well, I think basically, the people keep saying, well, it's a good deal for Canada. It's the best we could get. And I understand that there was a lot of pressure to get the deal done. We were dealing with a bully in the United States, Donald Trump, and we were dealing with threats against the auto industry. And he wanted very badly into our dairy industry. From a point of view of what they say Canada, it's a good deal. On a national basis, yes, but you have to understand when they say Canada back east, they're really referring to Ontario. This is a very good deal for Ontario. It protects the car industry, it protects the car parts industry. I think steel and aluminum will eventually come into the deal also and get some protection. It's not in the deal now, but I think those tariffs will come off shortly. From BC's point of view, it's a disaster. It does give the nation a deal, but I cannot for the life of me fathom why softwood lumber was not included in at least a major part of the negotiations. BC industry has been suffering for decades under the American aggression towards our softwood lumber industry. We've been before the trade panel, 4, 5, 6 times. We win every time, but the Americans know they just have to launch another challenge. Meanwhile, they impose millions and millions of dollars worth of tariffs, and then Canada, having no backbone, even when we win, we only get back part of the money we've already given them. So we actually have been funding their challenges of our stumpage rates and our forest exports. And they get away with it, and they've gotten away with it long enough. And this was the opportunity with the rework of NAFTA to insist that we get a deal that includes softwood lumber. And from what I could see, it was never really seriously part of the negotiations. And part of the blame I put is on the BC media. Where were they? Where was the national media? I saw the press conference that Trudeau and Freeland gave after the deal was signed. The entire National Press Gallery was represented there in Ottawa. Not a single reporter said, why wasn't softwood lumber dealt with? Not a question. And then you wonder, well, where is the BC media? The day after the deal, Trudeau was here in Kitimat making an announcement, and from what I saw, not a single BC reporter even had the temerity to ask why wasn't softwood the subject of the negotiations. And I can assure you, if softwood was as important to Ontario or Quebec as softwood is to BC, that question would have been front and center not only by the government, but by the media. And it's because we're way out here, and it's the old attitude, we'll take the rest, screw the West, that you see so often in Ottawa, and that's what was done here in this deal. And it boggles my mind that softwood lumber was not at least attempted to get into the deal, wasn't included in the deal. So now the industry is going to be fighting decades more, and have to pay millions of dollars to the Americans. And even when we win in the International Trade Panel, we'll get back part of what they've stolen from us with their challenges to our stumpage rates and our system. And it really is amazing to me that was not included. So it's not a good deal for British Columbia, but it's a great deal for Canada, i.e. Ontario, and to a lesser extent, Quebec.
We'll have more with Harvey Oberfeld right after this.
Arctic Star Exploration, operated by a team of proven mine finders, is focused on diamonds in Finland and the Northwest Territories of Canada. Work programs are underway in Finland and Canada. Arctic Star trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol ADD, on Frankfurt symbol 82A1, and the OTCQB symbol ASDZF. Please visit our website arcticstar.ca or call us at 604-689-1799.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Harvey Oberfeld. Harvey, Canada has a new political entity, the People's Party of Canada. Is it really the People's Party?
I don't think that'll go very far. That's Maxime Bernier's, his nose was out of joint when he didn't win the leadership, and you could see signs fairly early on. He wasn't happy with Scheer, and he wasn't happy with being second fiddle, and he certainly wasn't happy with being pushed aside. And so he was kind of carping at the edges for a while, and I think he wants to be front and center. And I think, he may have, I don't know if he was a student of history, but it reminds me when John Turner became leader of the Liberal Party. And I remember I was at the convention where that happened, and this woman from Quebec, one of the delegates, said to me, "We'll get that guy," because they wanted Chrétien. And you know what? They did. It took a while, it took time, but they basically went after. They would do nothing to really give John Turner a fair shake at things. The politicians from Quebec made sure that his life was very difficult in Ottawa. They really didn't support him as fully as they could or should have. And I think I've seen some of that here with Bernier. I think Bernier's people and Bernier himself, they wanted the top job. And when they didn't get it, they figured, well, we'll do what we can to undermine or whatever, or come up with, he came up with a book, he came up with policies totally contravening the policies of the Conservative Party, especially on market management and market supply. And, then he figured, well, it's going to take too long, so I'll just go form my own party. And he called it the People's Party. And, I wrote on my blog, you take a look at any regime across the world that calls itself the People's Republic, the People's Party, the People's this. They're all dictators, and they're not, the people are the furthest from the attention of the government that takes place. So ironic that he calls himself the People's Party. How could any party be the People's Party? You get 3 people in a room, you're going to have 4 opinions within an hour. So how could any party really represent the people? It's, first of all, it's a technical impossibility, and certainly from a political point of view, it's not going to happen. Quebec's interests and Ontario's interests, as I was saying earlier, they're not the same as British Columbians. So this is Maxime Bernier trying to basically make some trouble, I guess, for Scheer, and also thinking that he might be able to catch on to something with a little further right of center positions on things that he thinks will, cater to Canadian xenophobia or fears and things like that. I personally don't think he'll go anywhere. Maybe a couple of seats in Quebec, but I don't think, certainly in the West, certainly in Ontario, I don't really see him going anywhere. I think it'll be, I think Andrew Scheer, it's going to pose some problems, but I don't think it's, going to cause much problem for the next election for the Conservatives, having Maxime Bernier off on the side snipping away.
Do you think Bernier might have been encouraged because the president of France didn't have a set party? He was basically an independent. The new government in Quebec, their party really didn't exist until a year ago. Do you think those kind of movements have encouraged him?
Well, I don't know. I haven't talked to him about it, but I think it's possible that he's a man who's been looking at politics around the world. He's seen there is a shift to the right. Certainly in Europe there has been a shift to the right. There is a shift even in Canada to the right. And maybe he figured that, well, we'll try to take advantage of that. If you listen to the way he talks, he's certainly trying to position himself a little bit to the right of the Conservatives. That's where his niche will be. But I'm not so sure it's going to work. I think Trudeau is the biggest threat to Scheer and the Conservatives. I don't think the NDP are going to count for much in the next federal election. I think they're going nowhere. And I think it's going to be a Scheer-Trudeau fight. And by the way, I should say something about Scheer, because I've been critical of him on my blog. But I will say this. In question period, I almost jumped out of my chair. He was the only person I saw that day, and when the trade deal was announced, who asked why wasn't softwood lumber included in it. And, you didn't see that on the CBC, on the national, which isn't any national, it's really Ontario's and Quebec's interest. But Scheer got up and asked about softwood lumber. So I think Scheer will probably be the big challenge for Trudeau. And, Maxime Bernier could pull off a couple of seats in Quebec, but I have a feeling he might pull them off, believe it or not, from the NDP, because even though he's conservative and they're more left-wing, the type of people who are voting a protest vote in Quebec would probably go more for Maxime Bernier than they would for Jagmeet Singh.
Harvey, were you surprised to see the NDP government in BC actually praise the former government, the Liberals, for setting up the giant $40 billion LNG project?
No, because the election's over and they're in power now, and I was a little bit amused. I was a little bit amused to watch how the NDP was so critical of LNG when Christy Clark was, pushing it. Now all of a sudden there's big smiles announcing this deal. The only question, again, it's too bad I'm not still working, because it occurred to me, I would have asked the question right there when Horgan was there and Trudeau was there. How would the whales know the difference between bitumen and natural gas shipments? Because the ships that are going to be carrying all this LNG, they all operate with bunker fuel. They don't operate themselves with natural gas. So you're going to have all these ships carrying liquid natural gas, and if we get another plant, you'll even have more of them. And for some reason, that seems to be quite fine with all the people who are crying about coastal navigation, coastal travel by big ships. Well, apparently it's okay now, as long as they're carrying LNG and not bitumen. But I don't think the whales are going to know the difference. And I would have asked that question. How are the whales supposed to know if it's the sound of the ship, if it's the movement of the ship, if it's the movement of the propellers? How are they supposed to know the difference, whether they should be happy with LNG while, being worried about sacrificing their lives because the ships are carrying bitumen? I wish I had been there to ask that question, but I hope somebody will at one point draw the parallel that if you can support LNG shipments in large container ships or large ships, why can't you support the coastal navigation of ships carrying oil?
Harvey, thank you so much for chatting with us.
You're welcome.
My guest has been Harvey Oberfeld. You can find his blog, Keeping It Real, on harveyoberfeld.ca. If you have any questions for Harvey or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.